Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. It must be weird hearing those sounds again coming out of my voice. I am Kevin Lieber, and with me, as always, back after a month, is Matthew Tabor.
You make it sound like I was gone for a month.
Well,
I've been here the whole time.
You were to others, technically.
Oh, you're kidding me. Oh, no, you're kidding me. Is that my internet or Kevin's? Oh, this isn't real. This is not real.
What?
Oh, okay. Okay, you froze for like 45 seconds.
I know. This is the problem that I was telling you. So this is just part of the new reality. So, yes, I froze for 45 seconds because it's an ongoing process trying to do anything in my life, including the fact that we tried to record this podcast last week, and it was going quite swimmingly, I would say, until my power went out completely, just out of the blue. And really hard to continue to record a podcast when you don't have electricity, as it turns out.
I don't know. When I lost electricity, I just fired up the oil lamp. I don't know. So what I'm hearing here is a lack of preparedness. That's what concerns me. You should have whale oil. You should have barrels full of whatever it takes for days and days to survive.
I don't know. I don't know what it takes. I'm trying to figure it out. But yeah, if you couldn't tell by the total absence of the last month, freezing immediately as soon as we start recording, or even those who joined us for the failed recording last week, things have been a little bit tumultuous in my life, in my personal life, in my work life. There's kind of this impossible juggling act that's been going on for about 6 weeks now. And
yeah, that's fair. Yep.
And I feel like the juggling is going to continue for the foreseeable future. I'm not quite sure how to stop juggling.
It is, but you have gone from juggling chainsaws to, like, I think at this point, you're juggling actual juggling balls. Like, you've still got to have 7 in the air right now. But I don't think that they're flaming torches or sharp blades anymore. You did get through that without really harming yourself or others. And that's kind of the best you can hope for with that sort of thing. But I mean, it's not a big deal to have a few weeks where everything is up in the air. And that is, I mean, look, it is really important to point out that this isn't just things got busy for you. This isn't, I got overwhelmed with stuff. I had a perfect storm of things. No, when you say, like things in my personal life, no, you upended your life, like completely and totally, and sorted it back out again. That's huge. That's huge. It's not a little. It's tough to get to the podcast. No. So these were flaming chainsaws that were, just on full throttle.
Yeah. They were running. Maybe they're just, non-flaming, non-running chainsaws at this point. But I am in a new studio, which those of you who will see, well, not by the time this podcast comes out, but soon enough, you'll see the new Vsauce 2 video that we have also been working on for quite a while. That will come out soon, and you'll see the new studio. So that has been and continues to be a major work in progress. I mean, literally, as soon as we were about to set up to record for this, I was like hanging a sound blanket behind me, and I have another sound blanket beneath me because the new studio that I'm in, which is brand new and has been a major part of why I've been gone and so busy, is a bit echoey at the moment. And I have a lot of work to continue to do to soundproof this room. I think John did an amazing job of kind of treating the audio for the new video, which when he received it, I mean, when I told him, I'm like, dude, the audio is going to be echoey. He was like, no problem. I can handle that, in post. And that was before he actually heard it. And he was like, oh, this is a lot worse than I thought it was going to be. I mean, imagine trying to record a video in a cathedral. That's essentially what it sounded like, that level of reverb, which is nice when you're a church choir, but not exactly conducive to YouTube video making. So that's one of the many things that is on my still very long list of things to do. But nevertheless, it was really great to be able to sit down and hopefully, while there'll probably still be some internet connectivity issues along the way, because that's something that's still not sorted out either. I don't have proper internet. I am currently using the Starlink satellite internet, which is great, don't get me wrong, except for the fact that it seems to cut out briefly every now and then, maybe when the satellite, moves or something and it's not happy and it has to reposition. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but this has been something that I've also had to deal with. That's not getting fixed sort of anytime soon. So anyway, one of the things I wanted to discuss with you, because I've had, as you can imagine, a flood of thoughts in the interim period about creative life and normal life, how those things stack upon one another, how they intersect, how they conflict. And the first thing that jumps out is just feeling like grateful, I guess, in the past for how many things I had in order and stable beneath me in order to stack creative projects on top of. When you don't have a firm foundation beneath you, it's pretty hard to do multiple different formats of YouTube videos, a weekly podcast, just kind of normal creative stuff. The cartoons that I was trying to do once a week for Instagram, like that really has fallen off. That's like 7,000th on my list of things to do. You really gain a sense of appreciation for, I suppose, the environment, which allows you to have the freedom to be like, I'm going to draw a cartoon today.
Yeah, there are two paths to that. You have to be free of the problems, and there are two ways to go about this. And one is to sort everything out, and the other is to completely ignore it.
Yeah,
like these really are the two paths, and there's no in between at all. And the best way to think about this is thinking about like the trope of the absent alcoholic writer. That author who drank himself into a stupor and neglected his wife and kids, or did whatever he could to send his kids away, all of this stuff. That is one way of dealing with the problem. You can eliminate those disruptions by simply ignoring them or sending them away. I'd advise against
or
that.
the streamer whose room is just piled high with piss jugs, right? That's like a more modern take that I think people are familiar with. Or it's like, or the meme that's like, "Damn girl, you live like this." It's just like disgusting filth.
Yeah, it is the easiest way, and the payoff is instant, which was so amazing about it. You do something in that realm of ignoring or putting off, or not even getting up to go to the bathroom, just filling your jug, your big gulp. That the problem is solved instantly, and it's back to whatever you want to do. And it's we wouldn't be having this discussion if it weren't lots harder to arrange actual solutions for problems. Like you mentioned something earlier about, you just have to make some shifts on like a license plate or car insurance or something like that. There are all these nuts and bolts things that, you don't notice how many there are until you have to do them all at once. You could just not do it. You could just not do any of them. You could focus on like the one thing you needed, which is, let's say you get 3 different remote internet services so that at any one time one of them is flowing, and call it a day. You could absolutely do that, and you would be able to draw comics and play the video and do whatever else you wanted. But it will bite you hard. The consequences of this are severe. When you go back to that literature example, yes, you can totally start drinking at 10 a.m. and be passed out when your kid comes home from school. That's going to play out poorly in like 15 years, and it's going to get worse. It's like a horrible credit card debt, but with life problems. The interest is piling up over time. It just gets worse. But it's hard to swallow the reality of it's going to take me 6 weeks or 6 months or 6 years to get the stability I need to do my thing. That's really hard to do, especially when you're younger, and 6 years seems like a lifetime. To me, at this point, 6 years is just like, I don't know. It's the same to me as a month ago. It's like not a unit of time that matters. When I was 18 and I'm thinking about the difference between 18 and me being 12, it's like, that's a dozen lifetimes ago.
It's a third of your life. Yeah.
Yeah. And probably a solid half of my sentient life. It's not like the first six years of my life were all that productive or interesting. And the second 6 wasn't much better. Certainly, not compared to being an actual person, which you should be at least close to that by high school. But that's kind of why you're able to solve these things, because you look at it and say, this is the stuff I need to do the work I need to do, the stuff I want to do, wake up and have a daily life that is what I need it to be. And that's going to take a decent amount of time to create those conditions. You're totally okay with that. Would you always have been okay with that?
Oh, I'm not okay with it. I'm really anxious and frustrated like every day that everything isn't already completely settled. Unless I misunderstand what you're saying. Like the way that I feel.
No, you are.
Yeah, the way that I feel right now is like I wish that I had probably, man, I think like 2 weeks. If I had 2 weeks of just zero responsibility and I could just grind away on like setting up the scaffolding, the conceptual scaffoldings of life in order to settle everything that I want settled. Oh man, I would love that so much. When I've been talking just in my personal life to people who are asking about, how's the new studio? How's everything going? Is it, are you so happy with it? I am like, yeah, but I don't enjoy it at all right now because it's such a mess. Like everything is such a mess and chaotic that it's actually like not awesome. And no one that I've spoken to in person has reacted with any sympathy to that. They don't understand at all. They're like, why are you worried about that? Like you have the rest of your life to sort of figure out the things that you're stressed out about. And I'm like, that's the point. That's not what I want to do with the rest of my life. I want to sort that stuff out immediately so that I can spend the rest of my life creating things and working on projects and doing things, building things that, are of interest to me. Not doing stuff like soundproofing a studio. Like I just want all of that stage over with because I hate it. I hate this stage that I'm in, which is just like dumb, messy grunt work of setting things up. And I want to get that over with and move on to, there are so many projects that that I want to work on that have been completely abandoned for weeks now, which I hate. I hate that's the way that it is. And I don't even know when I'm going to be able to pick them back up because I don't know when I'm going to be ready to.
This is, I'm sort of laughing as you're talking about all this stuff because I hadn't thought about what a difference, this is. I am the total opposite of what you're describing. So for example, I know the pace of taking down and disposing of and processing trees. I drove around, my property and estimated that if I'm diligent with this, I think I can have the border done in about 3 years, maybe 4. And I just thought, well, okay, that's fine. But you and I were talking about the rock and soil problem you've got. You have a little bit of a rock problem right now.
Yes.
And you were saying, I want to have, a machine's got to come in here and deal with this and take all the rocks, grade it down, lay some topsoil, get the grass growing, whatever. And I don't know if you remember, but I said something like, why don't you just pick them up? You were like, that would take me forever. And I was like, yes, so what? So what? Pick up the rocks. And it might take 6 months. You might have it done by next summer. And the grass will grow in over time and start to fill in. And a few years later, you're going to have a lawn. And that's fine. And you were just horrified as I was suggesting this as a legitimate path. And it just is not at all what you want or how you want to do it.
It's not how I want to spend my time. All it comes down to is time. Yeah. And I am like hyper aware of my time. And in many ways, like I understand the argument that like, probably I should be picking rocks just to get outside and get some physical labor and, breathe the fresh air and all of that stuff. That is valid. And I think you and I have also had this discussion in regards to robot lawnmowers, in which you were like, hey, robot lawnmowers are a thing and maybe you could get one in a few years. And I was like, well, I actually don't think I want a robot lawnmower because I think probably I should be mowing the lawn just to have that type of connection with land. And I mean, I know that this sounds highfalutin and kind of ridiculous in some ways, but I think a certain degree of like manual labor is really important, and getting your hands dirty is really important. Picking up like a gabillion rocks over the next like 8 months doesn't qualify in that category to me, because I would much rather be working on creative projects than doing that. So
no, and that's valid. It's totally an opportunity cost thing for you. That it's just like, why would I waste time with this when I have other things that I have to do and want to do? That's a totally valid way to do it. And so after that conversation, like there was no judgment at all on my end, where well, you can totally do it this way and have your result and eliminate the stress to not have this long-standing project hanging over your head that you're reminded of every time you walk outside and trip over a boulder.
Well, and if it was like the one project that was really important to me that I could just focus on as a way to take a break, to get outside, to get away from screens and all of that stuff, sure. But my point is that like I feel as though I have like 175 of those rock picking level projects that I need to get done, and it's driving me nuts. And whenever I talk to other people, like I guess normal people about this, they're just kind of like, I don't understand what your problem is. Like, that's just life, and you chip away at that stuff over time. And I'm like, well, first of all, I notice things to a degree that can be really helpful in creative projects and really stressful and neurotic in normal life. So, there are really two types of creative people. One type are people who want everything in like very clean, clear, proper order, like their workspace. There are creatives who want their workspace to be very, very clear, clean, and ordered. And then there are creatives who really want their workspace to be cluttered, messy, and chaotic. I don't know why this is, but this is how it is. They're like clearly different.
There's not much in between.
There's not much in between. You're either a creative person who wants to be surrounded by stuff like a mad scientist, or you want to be working in essentially like a museum of just like order and cleanliness. So I am the museum grade creative where like I want everything to be in its exact place, have a purpose for why it's there. And if not, then it's not there. And that's how I like to work. Well, that is not how my space is right now. For those joining us, and I have my camera on while we're recording, you can see that behind me there is just stuff. There are boxes, there are blankets, there's an extra office chair, there's like bags for camera equipment and lighting equipment, and it's just, there are like tripods strewn about. That's just, I hate it.
It's funny, you describe it like it's total chaos, and it's not. Most people would look at that and think, they wouldn't even think there's a problem.
I know.
So even that degree is too much for you. Yeah, I mean, I'm more on the other side. It's just that I try as much as possible
You're a weird
to,
blend of the two. So if there's any in between of
yeah,
these two things, you are the poster child for the blend, because some stuff that you have is like meticulously organized.
yeah,
But
uh-huh.
there's also kind of a lot of it, and it's kind of all around.
Yeah, yeah. So an example here is I was talking about this when I did a stream on Friday or Saturday, which yeah, this was a good Twitch stream for the people who came out. It was awesome. We had a great deal of molten lead. We had an explosion, which was nice. Uh, it was a very good stream. With workbench and tool stuff, it is extremely important to me that it is clean, and that you have to have this. You have to have everything in order in that realm. It is way too inefficient otherwise. When you need a tool, you have to be able to go and get it. The end. You cannot find it. You can't move one thing to get to it. You can't make space. No, you go and get it. And if you don't have a setup that allows you to just have what you need instantly, then you're wasting all of your time. And it snowballs big time. At the same time, like right now, you walk into my living room and hardware is strewn in boxes across the floor. And it's been that way for a week or two. Nuts, bolts, washers, sorted out. I am unfortunately waiting for the organizers for them. That's why they are the way they are, so that when these come, I can put them in that place they need to be, whatever. But it doesn't bother me. I mean, I'm annoyed at Home Depot for not shipping my order when they said they would. But it's like, well, if there's nuts and bolts all over my living room floor for 2 weeks, like, so what? I'll walk around it. There's it does go both ways on that stuff, and it's for me, things tend to be chaotic until they're not, which sounds stupid, but you'll get huge voluminous stacks of books, and then all of a sudden they will be meticulously sorted and in their place. The end. And so it comes together in the end, but in the middle it is hyper chaos, and oftentimes very long standing chaos. It might take me a really long time to figure out where I want something on the wall, for example. This Kevin, you saw this some time ago. I have a feed bag from chicken feed that I really like, that is framed, and it's been just kind of leaned up against the wall in my living room since May or June, because I don't know exactly where I want it yet. I'm pretty sure I know. At this point, I think I know. But it was fine with me to have that hang out for 4 or 5 months as I, got a sense of where I wanted it to be later. So when you have 50 of those things happening at once, it adds up to, a flea market style life. So it must have made you just, you must feel anxious when you walk through what it must seem to you like a horrible hoarder situation compared to
Your house?
everything in its place.
Your house?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't say that the phrase horrible hoarder situation has ever entered my mind. I don't think that, because
but I mean, like, relative to that purposeful arrangement,
yes,
and cleanliness and stuff that you do,
I wouldn't live that way. No. There's
right.
There are too many boxes and piles of things for me to be comfortable with. There's no, but this is what I'm saying. It's like, I think I am the outlier here, or at least it seems that way with the conversations that I've had in the last several weeks, because everyone that I've spoken with, where I'm like I can't handle this. There's just, stuff everywhere, and I just want it over with. I want everything put away in its proper place. I think that I'm the crazy person here, because no one has reacted with sympathy to say, like, I totally know what you mean. Everyone's like, what are you complaining about? Like, that's just normal. And I'm like, that's not normal for me. This is a nightmare scenario for me, which is like clear in the fact that I haven't been hyper productive on the creative side with this podcast and with Vsauce 2, because there's so much for me to sort out that I can't comfortably ignore that in the face of, working on online stuff. I don't seem really capable of doing both. I mean, we have this Vsauce 2 video that is coming out. So like, thank God for that. And I think it's going to be a great video, and I'm proud of it and everything. So that has been able to happen in the meantime, but that's it. That's it. Everything else has taken a back seat because I feel like the front seat is friggin' full. Like, it is full of things that I have to do. And I don't know any other way to be, I guess.
We want to help you make something and mean something. And we say that phrase all the time because when you're making something and you know it means something, even if it's just to you, that's when you feel pretty good about what you're creating. The support for the Create Unknown in recent weeks has been incredible. Animators, artists, musicians, YouTubers, aspiring filmmakers, comedians, it is crazy how talented everybody in this community is. Consider joining the Create Unknown Patreon. Every dollar that comes through goes straight into the podcast and its community. That means more highlights videos. It means a big Minecraft project that's on the way. And eventually we'd like to manufacture custom piss bottles so you never have to leave your battle station. And being a patron unlocks participation in all of our live recordings. You've seen the roster of guests we've had. Having access to their minds is a unique opportunity. You can go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown or click the link that's in the description. Every little bit helps, and your support means absolutely everything to us. Patreon.com/thecreateunknown, links in the description. We appreciate you, Space Cowboys.
I don't think you're crazy about it. I think you're rational about it, and I think most people are not. Because when you talk about your studio space and how you need it to be for you to function properly, it is 100% exact in terms of matching how I think about my workbench and tool situation. Exactly the same things I would say about that as you say about the studio, and it's the same reasoning too. That you have to be able to function flawlessly. And if you can't, it's stressful, it derails you, it eats up time that you really don't have because there's so much going on. Just all of these things, I could use the same script and feel totally comfortable saying it. It's a lot of work, though. It's a lot of work to get a thing to that point. And that's... You, in that scenario, look at it as a very rational calculation. And I do too in that one small arena of my life where you say, I have to do it this way so that I can do the stuff that I want and need to do. All the time it takes me to set this up pays off in my ability to produce things and do it without a headache. And you're willing to make that trade. I am in that, again, that one small, tiny realm. It kills me that right now I am mixing sort of assorted small projects with needing to clean and process brass, which I have kind of a jumble of the two purposes. And it's bad to have two distinct purposes happening at one time. When I had to put a lot of work into chainsaw stuff, I just straight up cut everything else because that bench was dedicated to saws for several months. And it was totally a practical thing. You set it up to do these tasks. It takes forever to break it down, to clean. It's messy. You're dealing with grease and oil, and the sawdust isn't a big deal, but the grease and the oil is. So let's say I get something done with a saw. I really need to deep clean that area so that the next thing I put down does not get any grease on it. No bar oil. That was not worth it at all to me. So I just said, all right, none of these other things happen until I'm through this chainsaw season. It would have been nightmarish and frustrating to swap back and forth to that degree. And I'm dying to finish cleaning and processing brass because then I can take down the unit I use to dry it all. I have 2 tumblers that go rotary tumblers, to vibrational tumblers. This stuff is all out that I can store it properly. It doesn't have to be out perpetually once I'm through this next 50, 60,000 pieces that are processed. So I get that. It's hard with the space that you're setting up too. You need to be able to shoot videos of a certain kind. You need to be able to sit down and record a podcast. You need to be able to do OnlyFans Catboy streaming.
My feet pics. I don't even have my chaise lounge for my feet pics set up. No, but that's the thing is like I wanted to give you a concrete example because your explanation of your workbench setup made me realize like I can actually explain like what I mean. So as you may know, on Vsauce 2, there are whiteboard shots. It's me drawing on a whiteboard. Well, in order to achieve that shot, I need to have an overhead camera set up. In my old studio, I had built a ceiling mount with a 3-point articulated arm that hung down from the mount that would hold my camera. And that was a permanent fixture of my setup. So that camera hung there, 100% of the time. I also had a ceiling mounted shotgun microphone so that whenever I had to record a video or do any sort of voiceover or anything, the microphone was permanently mounted in place. So I would just sit down, hit record on my sound recorder, and record audio. Okay, I don't have that right now. I haven't had the time to create the ceiling mount setup for either the camera or the microphone. So I am doing it dirty, which is I have a C stand, which is, essentially it's just a floor stand that has a clamp for a boom pole on it. And if I am recording, I only have one of these right now. I only have one boom pole and I only have one C stand. So if I want to record an overhead camera shot, I have to mount the camera to the boom pole with its own, mounting hardware, and then set up the shot. Move the C stand so it's over the whiteboard table and like a particular angle and everything, a certain height above the table, all of this stuff. Okay. Now, if I'm done shooting whiteboard stuff and I want to record audio again, I have to strip all of that setup down. I have to dismount the camera from the boom pole, connect the shotgun microphone to it, and then move the whole setup so that the microphone's not in the shot of the front camera and it's pointed at my mouth in a certain direction and a certain distance to capture the audio. This is not the end of the world. I'm not like talking about life or death here. This is just my work setup. But the point is, this is like one of the many, many things that I'm trying to do in a really inefficient way right now because I'm slowly building up the studio to be at a point in which everything is efficient. Everything is in its proper place so that it's all turnkey because I want to be able to do a whole bunch of different creative projects, shoot a whole bunch of different kinds of video and record this podcast and everything. And everything has to be turnkey in order to be able to grind the way that I love to be able to grind on work. And right now I'm not grinding on work. I'm like grinding on life so that I can create the environment in which I can get back to grinding on work because my output before was pretty much like optimal work grind level. And now I'm just kind of starting from scratch with that. And that's what's really been frustrating for me over the past several weeks. It's like, I'm not in the turnkey scenario to, rise and grind every day the way that is very fulfilling to me. Like I'm not complaining about that part. That's the way I want to live and what I want to do. I'm just in this like limbo stage in which I'm no longer like at that point yet, once again. So, hopefully over the next month or so, kind of like amidst all the responsibilities that I do have every single day in the meantime, I can slowly get back to a level of normalcy that's comfortable for me. And you can, start seeing the benefits of that, which is, Well, really not even getting to a point where I was before. The point is to get to like the next level and really start being able to do even more and stack more projects on top of the projects that I, have been doing for the last 6 years.
Yeah, this is exactly what you just laid out is exactly why I didn't stream for so many months. Mine was a combination of three things. One was turmoil in the first quarter of the year. The second quarter was having to put. I'm trying to think when turmoil ended. So it was sort of the end of turmoil, and then into having to do other things. They just had to take priority. And well, now I got to the point where my problem was having that turnkey set up. And the last few weeks, I mentioned in the Discord, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, so that I can get that area back to where it needed to be, so I can pop some streams on. Well, I got there, and the only reason I streamed on Friday for 6 hours is because I took the project I was working on. It was out on the table. I could click a few things, and the stream was finally there. I reached that point where it was turnkey again, and it's turnkey right now. So I'm there. It was just exactly that same process where you can't have this setup and takedown and major sacrifice thing. It did not make sense for me to do any of the streams, which I love. For two reasons. I love just the process of doing that stuff with the way I see it with other people, because it's historically a totally solitary thing. Almost everything I've ever worked on, aside from a few years in my teens, so we're talking the late 90s, I have worked 100% alone on all these small tasks, all the projects. It's really nice to just talk to people as I'm doing them. It's totally a different experience to hang out and even talk about the thing. What am I going to do? Sit there alone and talk to myself, describing what I'm doing and why? No, it doesn't work that way. It's stupid. So it's actually really nice to be able to do that. I realized that, pretty much nobody listening has any idea what I'm talking about. The first thing I did, I found an old vise, a small one that's exactly the size I need on that bench. My brother found it when we were cleaning out the garage. It's probably from the late 50s and has been here since then. It was in terrible shape, just really bad shape. So I embarked on refinishing this just out of a little bit of sentimentality, because I could get a perfect replacement for like $60 on Amazon.
How is a vise in bad shape? Being rusted?
Yeah, just rust.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So
I was going to say there's not a lot to vices.
No. It's funny. There are like 3 parts to it. That's it.
Yeah.
It's very small too. It's a Sears from before Sears made Craftsman and took on the Craftsman line. So it's really old Sears, has a big stamp on it. And it was red, just like if you're familiar with Craftsman tools, they are historically red. Same shade. But that red paint, oh boy, the rust was horrible. Any paint that was left, it was covered in grime. It was bad. It was so bad that before I did anything, I put it in the dishwasher and just ran a cycle to get dirt off of it. Putting grimy tools in the dishwasher is not standard, but it needed that. It was going to be too much of a project for me to scrub it. And after that, I had to use wire brushes to get all the rust off that I could, and then prime it, put a layer to stop the rust and cover it up so that the paint I put on would have something to adhere to as well. So again, I spent, I'm spending 500 hours of my time so that I don't have to spend $50. But I like the sentimentality aspect of this, and I'd like to rehab it so I can use it on my bench. So I painted that by hand with a tiny paintbrush, an art paintbrush, probably 1/8 of an inch wide. Well, I started doing that on stream. It took a few hours. It was good. Monahim says that I painted it a cowardly yellow. I painted it yellow, bright yellow, so that it could match the yellow side of my workbench, which is
The cowardly side.
I use the cowardly side. Yes, the cowardly. I have a general side that has an 8-foot bench and panels that are red that are on the wall that hold tools. And then the other side has a 6-foot bench with yellow panels. And that is for the fine stuff. I do a lot of gun stuff on that. So I wanted the yellow vise to be on the yellow side. That's where it'll be located. This was nice. It was nice to not, usually I pop an audiobook on and I enjoy that. But it's even better to just hang out with people as I'm doing that stuff. Now, it took a few hours to paint. And then when that got painted and it was drying, there's nothing else you can do for a day. I pulled out a little lead melter that I'd gotten about a year ago in a box of things at an auction. I was actually buying the other things in the box. Conrad was there, and we fired up this. He was in the chat, so I designated him in charge of safety. We fired up the lead melter, and I started throwing things in it to melt them.
How does it work? Like what is the heating element of a lead melter?
So this is a very old one, which is why I wasn't sure if it would work. It plugs in, and then basically that circuit is exposed. It looks like a ladle, like a big scoop, and that's made of iron. And on the inside, there's just one coil that goes around the outside, and that gets orange. That gets hot.
Whoa!
You throw things in the ladle until it just gets hot enough to melt the lead, which is around close to 700 degrees. Then when you have your molten lead, which looks shiny silver liquid like mercury in a thermometer, you pour it into what you're casting. And I had some old sinker molds for fishing that I'd also gotten incidentally in a box of things, and started just turning old scrap lead into, smelting that down and removing the impurities and pouring those sinkers for storage. But I would have had a fine time doing that alone. It's way more interesting to hang out with anybody as I'm doing it. But I also haven't been able to do stuff like that in years. I kind of could do it a year ago. So I was, doing some streams, leatherworking the rest. But wow, do I like being back there. It's my favorite thing. If I can do anything, it would be doing that type of work at a bench. It's the thing I truly enjoy the most in the world, even more than the outdoor stuff. It feels amazing to know that this is such a long explanation for why turnkey matters. I feel like at peace. A portion of me is at peace because I know that if I wanted to hit the off button on this podcast right now, I could walk downstairs and sit down at that bench and do something. It has been a really long time since I have been able to do that. And it makes all the difference. I really feel like a major part of me and my life has been unlocked again.
Yeah, so you understand what I'm talking about because you have a personal connection to this with the streaming. So you understand like the necessity to have this turnkey operation in order to do the thing. Whereas I think when you would, talk to most people about this, or I would, they're like, I don't understand what your problem is. At least you in that scenario can see, I could see how if you don't have this quick and ready, it becomes this kind of like monumental thing that just ultimately doesn't happen unless it is quick and ready. And I wanted to say, as it relates overall to this topic, that I don't want people to fall into the trap of saying like, well, this is why I put off all of my creative things because I don't have the right setup for it. Like I think it's potentially easy to use that as an excuse to say like, well, I could be working on my screenplay, but XYZ, isn't in proper order. So, therefore, I have a built-in excuse for why I'm not doing that. I think that what you should be if you have to have things in order to get to your creative project, to grind on that, you got to grind on the stuff to get it in order so that you can grind on the creative stuff. That's what the point of this, that's the lesson of the day is like, that is what I'm mired in right now that I'm frustrated by because I hate like the setup period of creating the environment for me to be able to grind on the creative stuff. That's what I'm grinding on now. And that's why I've like literally been doing virtually nothing but that for weeks now, because I know once that part's done, I am like off to the races when it comes to whatever projects I have in mind, and just sit down and bang them out, and it'll be awesome. But the point is that I am grinding away at that really what I consider like the really boring part of the process, which is setting all this crap up so that I can just flip switches and then bang. You got to be doing one or the other. Like if you're not banging on the creative stuff, then you should be banging on the, what would you call it? Like the infrastructure to bang on creative stuff.
Yeah, I think of it as the conditions for the other thing to happen. And this is actually a really big theme that goes beyond this stuff. Before though, I want to acknowledge what the better Benjamin James just said in the episode chat about with if there can be a flip side to this, that he set up his podcast mic and then thought, well, this is turnkey. I can record anytime I want, and kind of didn't get there. Whereas when it was put away and then, you get everything out, you set it up, there's an intentionality there that kind of forced him to record. That's a real thing, that there is, you can definitely have a purposeful aspect to what we're talking about. So it is, a little more complex than nuanced, not complex, but nuanced than we're making that sound. That can work for some people as well.
It could be a personality difference.
Yeah, totally. These things do adjust for personalities. But something I'm increasingly concerned about is, this is big, this is meta concern. And it has to do with this podcast, because I mentioned this to Kevin a while ago, a month or two ago, that I'm hitting this point of thinking that there are some hurdles that most people can't get over. That they can't get over certain walls. And I don't know if it's even possible to help them or change that. One of them is this concept that Kevin's talking about now, how important it is that you create the conditions that you need to do whatever it is. It's sort of like with, there's some sayings worded different ways with bodybuilding and even sports, where it amounts to great bodies are made in two places, the kitchen and the bedroom, because, little things like you can't out-train a bad diet is another one, right? So do what you want in the gym. It could be fantastic. And if you aren't sleeping properly and you're eating like an idiot in a way that doesn't support all that training, then this is not going to happen for you. You are not going to achieve the physical results you want because you're blowing it on the things that happen outside the gym. A lot of things work this way. I am not a bodybuilder at all. However, what I'm capable of doing outside is totally dependent on what I eat and how well I sleep. That works the same for me. Manual labor stuff tracks with this perfectly. My ability to do writing depends a great deal on whether my life lets me. So like if there's massive freaky chaos in my life, well, it's really hard to sit down and write a good narrative that will turn into an engaging visual, when it's done and edited like that. If I'm doing something, if I'm on my own, just writing some fictional thing or whatever, I need to not be so dead tired at 9 o'clock that I can write that capably. That has nothing to do with writing. The truth with this stuff is your projects matter to such a serious degree on things like, do you have good friends? Or do you have friends that throw chaos into your life constantly? Do you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever, that does that relationship allow you to do these things? Or are you so stressed or disrupted or whatever by, who knows, all the things that can happen with relationships? How do you feel physically? Do you have enough energy to do it? Do you feel, if it's one of those mental tasks like writing, are you sharp enough? Are you in the headspace that you need? Do you have to snort 17 bangs to get there? Or can you, in normal life, do these projects? Well, none of these things have anything to do with the creative projects. They just don't. They're totally separate life things. But by far, the most productive people that I have ever met they put most of their attention in solving the life stuff and avoiding pitfalls in life. Now, a lot of things you can't avoid. Bad things happen, accidents happen, people die, health conditions pop up. There's so much of that comes your way anyway that you really have to eliminate the things that are within your control. It can even be weather. That's not a natural disaster, but if there's 12 inches of snow out, there are certain things I can't do. I can't do anything about the weather. So it can run the gamut from tragic and serious to just a thing in life. So it requires a tremendous, tremendous sacrifice. You have to pay attention to those things. You have to put effort into sorting those things out. To give you a weird example of this, a poker player who I knew, this was almost 20 years ago now, who was really fantastic. I forget the conversation, but it amounted to, what's the most important thing for how you succeed, whatever. And he said, it turned out to be eating and sleeping and also yoga. But the yoga was really interesting. All of this amounted to this player being able to stay at a profitable table for as long as it was profitable. And when they started doing yoga, their back and their ass stopped hurting from sitting in bad casino chairs after 3 hours. If they were at a good table and it made sense to play for 12 hours, well, they ate well, they slept well, and their body did not start to hurt. So they could do that 12-hour session at an amazing table and not care. So this had nothing to do with the poker playing itself, but they were able to optimize their play by simply not getting sore on a crummy casino chair. Whereas, I even, I like move around, squirm around as I do this podcast, changing positions. Can something like yoga benefit a writer? Absolutely. If it means that you're comfortable sitting and writing for 4 hours when normally you'd, start to hurt at 2. Well, yoga, which has nothing to do with anything, has just unlocked 2 hours of very good writing in a roundabout way. But that's how this conditioned stuff works. You have to have a life that allows the other thing to happen. It's crazy how people make such bad decisions with these things. They will spend money in ways that make it impossible for them to do the stuff they want to do. They will, treat their minds and bodies in a way that does not support it. You can think about what you want to do and then think of all the things that would make it harder and how hard it is to set those right or to avoid them. There are people, we're never going to call out somebody for something like this. Maybe if they start to drop off or it becomes a very public thing. But whoever you are, somebody in your life who has a boyfriend or a girlfriend who ruins their life, or a husband or a wife, whatever. They're in some kind of relationship where, in a roundabout way, their health is worse. They're worse at their whatever. All the things that life stress takes its toll on. They don't have the money that they need to have because it goes out the window. It's a major, major sacrifice for somebody to say, I have to make a major change with relationships in my life to be able to live the rest of it. These things are not connected very cleanly. You've got to set boundaries with friends sometimes. There's just, you understand what this is because you all have stress from it. And we've spent 200 plus episodes talking about how to do your creative stuff. Well, the reality is it's going to go a lot better when you sort out your studio when you have it clean or you have it messy, whatever you need, when you have all these unrelated things that are in place the way you need them, that's where the creativity is going to happen. So yeah, I don't know how you kind of can't help people with that. Every case is individual.
Every case is individual, and that's why, yeah, I think the best that you can do, the best that we can do, is just describe the ways in which, we personally are affected, the conditions that we personally need in order to, be as productive and efficient as we need to be. Because you're right, like I detailed the fact that I need everything to be like kind of like clinically set up and orderly, whereas someone else might need it to be just like a hoarder's circus tent full of like wacky items, and they feel like the comfort and warmth of like the messy womb to work in. I mean, I said that I want a turnkey setup in order to sit down and bang out projects. And, Benjamin, as you mentioned, said that actually wasn't really working because it seemed to be a better and more productive scenario having to set up the stuff every time. It's like, okay, well, it's really helpful to take a step back and diagnose what it is you need to be doing in order to get the ball rolling, because there is no sort of prescription from me or you or anyone else that says, oh, all you got to do is paint by these numbers and you're going to have a beautiful painting. It doesn't work that way. Everybody's just too different, and everyone's lives are too different, and their personalities are too different. Like my neuroticism, my like Larry David level neuroticism makes it so, I need to live in a certain way in order to get my projects moving. And someone else's sort of like Big Lebowski, the dude personality probably doesn't. Like there's a reason that Larry David and the dude are kind of polar opposites, and whatever works for each of them works for each of them. But at least start at a place in which you can say, like, what works for me and what's not working for me, maybe more importantly. And I can say now, without a shadow of a doubt, having the turmoil that I've been, willfully thrust myself into, this is not some sort of, well, the universe is conspiring against me. It's like, no. These are all my own choices. But like, oddly enough, what people don't realize is the reason I made these choices actually is to like hyper turnkey my life, hyper set everything up. There has been so much work put into me identifying like all the ways in which I have been getting derailed over the last 6 years, and saying, I'm going to get rid of this problem. I'm going to get rid of this problem. I'm going to get rid of this problem. And it'll never be perfect. That's not possible. But I am, taking the baby steps to get it as close to the perfect environment and conditions that I need. And I'm really, really, truly very excited about the future of this. But as we've seen in like the month off of this podcast and the many other things that I haven't been able to get to, there are bumps along the way. And that's just kind of the nature of how I work and what works for me. But yeah, I think that your point is well taken, that sure, we can talk about thumbnails and we can talk about like video length and average watch time. And for the most part, there are a million brilliant podcasts solely about what you're talking about, whether it's, the medical reasons behind getting 8 hours of sleep, or what caffeine does to your body, or what alcohol does to your body, or, what you should be eating and not eating. There are a million of those podcasts that are very, very good. That's not this podcast. But if you, are
at the same time,
it's like this podcast is sort of downstream of those podcasts. You sort of need to kind of get those, for the most part, those podcasts and those elements of your life in as manageable order as possible in order to get downstream to where we are, where we're talking about setting up a studio and recording YouTube videos.
Yeah. So before COVID, just before whatever year this was, I don't remember. I was in Australia and New Zealand. I did a couple seminar things on, pretty much how to do YouTube, right? And something bothered me about it then that I haven't known until recently. I couldn't identify what it was until kind of recently. And there's no way I could ever get booked for an event saying what I want to say. Where if, oh, this is terrible. If somebody said, what do you have to do to have a career in YouTube in 2023? I would say you have to eat right, you have to sleep, you have to have good friendships. It would have nothing at all to do with content or thumbnails or titles or anything else. And I would be 100% sincere in saying that. That is what I would want to say to anybody. Nothing else matters if those aren't in place. They are going to be different, just like they're different for Kevin and I. We have different levels of tolerance for bullshit, too. There are some things that incense me that would make Kevin chuckle. And there are things that, that he'd go to full Larry David mode over. Where, I'm like, well, yeah, I do have a greasy pile of bolts in my living room. So what? So it does differ from person to person. That's fine. And there are all manners of ways to fix this. Like Monahan just, cracked a joke about friendships here. But even that, it can be people to talk to on Discord who are good. And, he said so many times, anybody who's involved in the Discord community knows that, my God, when was the last time we had to kick somebody from that server because of what they did? I think it was when they stole the server. It was the Turkish kid we even let him back. We brought him back in. He upended our entire life as it relates to the Create Unknown. And he was like, well, yeah, can I come back in? We're like, yeah, okay. We have a very, very good group of people. Is it the same as somebody you go get pizza with on Friday? Like, no, it's a different type of friendship. However, these are good relationships, and they're not bad ones. This is not a place where it's toxic all the time. Nobody goes bonkers over political stuff, for example, in the general chat. Like, there's no stress there. So you can meet these needs in a lot of different ways. That's my point. And it depends on personality. It depends on where you are, what your schedule is, what your, life circumstances are. But you have to do this. When I think of channels and creators that go beyond, actually, I won't say channels because it goes beyond online stuff. For every one person I can name who truly fell off because, their content turned into something people didn't like at all, and they never adjusted. They just do what they want to do, and they fell off because of that. For every one of those cases, I'm trying to think of the number, because it would be ridiculous. I could easily name 25 people who fell off because of total bullshit in their lives that affected the content they're making, or they couldn't do it at all. They changed. This is, we see this especially like in commentary type people. They seize on this a lot. It's actually a really important thing, even though they're very, very judgmental about it. But they rip on people for changing. People's personal lives and attitudes and stuff will change. iDubbbz was a frequent target of this. His priorities changed. His attitudes changed. A lot of people didn't like it. He got a lot of heat for it. Well, he just wanted to do things differently with his life. And the stuff his content is different now. That's okay, So that's an example of it not being like catastrophic, but there are a lot of dead channels because people have had to quit or stop being enjoyable. All of this, it had nothing to do with the content. It's not like they stopped being good at thumbnails where they ran out of ideas. No, that's not a problem. You don't need seminars about that stuff. Ideas are not the problem. It's can you execute them? And a major part of executing the ideas has nothing to do with the ideas at all.
Yeah.
It's so foundational that I just have this feeling. It's like, what's the point of talking about X, Y, and Z when it's all resting on a foundation that nobody seems to care about?
Well,
Nobody cares about this stuff.
I don't know. I don't know if nobody cares. I mean, like I said, there are a lot of podcasts that are about essentially getting your life straight. That we're talking
those
about.
People are boners, though. I don't want to live like those people.
Yeah, but I mean that's what they're trying to do, and whether or not they get like too hard into some bizarre lifestyle and promoting that and selling books about that. I mean, I think that's a different discussion, but there does seem to be like a general longing, I think, for living right and some sort of path to be on to feeling better and all of that sort of thing. Or else those people wouldn't exist. I mean, even the Andrew Tates of the world, like that's what he's doing. And whether or not he's literally a sex trafficker who should be in jail, I don't, right. I'm not sure. But regardless, his whole rise to popularity or infamy or whatever you want to call it is based around what you're talking about, which is to say, here's follow me. I'm the Pied Piper of masculinity or whatever. And I'm going to teach you, how to get women and be successful and make money or, whatever, which is, I mean, I don't actually know what his recommendations are for that stuff. I've never listened to any of his seminars, but yeah, I mean, he's not the only one like doing that. I think ultimately what we can provide with this podcast is at least point out the fact that these are things that you should be cognizant of, because there are plenty of people who probably do listen to this who don't listen to those type of like guru people. But just because you aren't actually, I think it's probably more indicative of maybe you're not searching out for that because you don't think it's a problem, but it could be the biggest problem that you have. And I think that's really the point that you're trying to make, is that like meanwhile, or, alongside whatever, I just use the thumbnail example thing again, whatever thumbnail problem you're having, if you're just like slamming pizza all day and you're sluggish and, you're carb crashing and you feel like garbage, that's a much bigger problem than what to title your next YouTube video. And those are not problems that you and I are immune to or haven't had our own battles with. Like that's not, this is
our biggest problem.
Yeah, this is not the High Horse podcast either. Like I'm not on any pedestal whatsoever. Like I am continually trying to figure out essentially what I'm willing to deal with in terms of my own, diet and sleep habits in order to be optimally productive. And, none of that is perfect.
No, all of this has been our focus, our really major set of problems is just life for a long, long time. Have we ever really had a problem with content? Not really. We've talked before about all sorts of pivots that had to be done, but that's the game. That's how it happens. Yeah. And that's really hard when it happens. But we figured that out. It's a hell of a lot easier to figure out what your next video should really be like than it is to decide, like, God, is this friend actually bad for my life? That's a tougher nut to crack. But Kevin, you and I have talked offline about this in a manner of communication so secretive. We use a series of carrier pigeons to exchange messages about this, and it's encoded as well. But no, I think we can express this very, very succinctly. The question is, are you in control of your life and yourself? Are you in control of yourself? If the answer is yes, then let's start talking about your creative project. If the answer is not yes, if it's almost, if it's maybe, if it's no, don't even bother. Just don't bother, because you have serious foundational issues to sort out that matter far, far more than anything else. It even guards against, you're talking about wanting to take away all of these little annoyances, disturbances, not non-turnkey things. That also means you're talking about how it's never going to be perfect. Well, it's also never going to end. That list is going to get new things on it as time goes on. It's so much easier to absorb those new problems when you're not mired in 100 things on that list. So you're guarding against the future as well. But this basic question, and I know it's one that I've been obsessed with for a couple months here, is, are you in control of yourself? And those elements, what that entails, is totally different for each person. Depends on their life circumstances, their interests, their relationships, their health, just literally everything.
Their habits.
The things that I need to be, their habits, right? The things that I need to be in control of, it's just a different list than Kevin's list. We have different lives, and we're not even altogether completely and totally different in terms of life circumstances. It's not like one of us is in some weird war-torn, suffering part of the world, and the other one is, uptown Manhattan. Like, no, we're, as far as it goes, very similar, but our lists are totally different for all those reasons. But that's the question. Are you in control of yourself to a reasonable degree, to all the degrees that you can be? There are a lot of things that you can't control. And there are some things that take a very long time for you to get a handle on. We were talking about job stuff earlier in the Discord, and the process of leaving one job and finding one that's a better fit can be very, very long. You can't quit and get a job tomorrow and have it sorted out. It's possible, but it's not going to happen that way. It's probably a 6-month process, if not longer. You need to make sure that you have a place to live as you make the transition. And, there's a lot to it. So you can't just, start eating carrot sticks tomorrow and say, my diet's better, I'm in control of myself. No. There's short-term, there's long-term on this. But that is the question. Are you in control of yourself? If there is any answer other than yes, I have a handle on everything it's possible for me to have a handle on, that needs to be your priority. Not your animation, not your filmmaking, not your YouTubing or music. No, stop and get a handle on yourself. When you do get to a point where you can do the creative stuff, you're actually going to be able to do it. It's going to explode with productivity and quality. I write a lot better now than I did a few years ago. My actual writing skills are the same. I'm probably a 5% better writer now than I was, say, 5 years ago. I am 500% better at having my life sorted out. Which do you think makes more of a difference? Which shows up more in my ability to write something good? Not the writing. Every episode we do amounts to, are you in control of yourself?
It's the unspoken question. Yeah.
It is.
And you're
the unspoken
speaking it finally.
Specter that haunts us.
Well, and it came up a few months ago. I don't remember what we were talking about, but you were trying to figure out, I think there was someone that you were complaining about. I don't even remember who it was. And
that doesn't narrow it down at all.
No, it's pretty much anyone on planet Earth, including me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember saying, if you're not in control of yourself, then how could anyone trust you? And I think that and you can't trust.
Oh yeah.
And then if you're not in control of yourself, how can you trust yourself? And if someone else is not in control of themselves, how can you trust them? And those are questions that are so at the bottom of things that people don't even see them. Like if you imagine a tree, okay, those are the roots that you cannot see because they are buried underground. But the roots are there. If the roots weren't there, the tree would not be there. It wouldn't have grown and it wouldn't be standing. So the roots are there, even though you can't see them. And the roots of all of this stuff are you in control? And then can I trust you? And I don't know if people aren't recognizing the roots, then like good luck with the trunk and the branches and the leaves.
Yeah. And I will say that I employ this in terms of judgment with people to a very strong degree now, where I evaluate them, which sounds weirdly clinical, but I'm thinking of it in terms of doing projects and just all sorts of stuff like that. I look at these things much, much more strongly than I look at what they're able to do. We talked a little bit too. So after the failed podcast, for the people who weren't here last week when we Kevin swallowed the Plan B pill 15 minutes in and aborted that podcast. I hung around for about 2.5 hours and we talked. We talked about all sorts of things. Well, one of those things was with Dan the Latch, who is here today, a project that would entail going to Eastern Europe and just showing people that you can go and do things. Well, we were looking for people to go, and we were looking at what they could do. So let's say, do they have skills to run a camera? How capable are they with recording audio out in the field, things like that? That was the wrong approach. We thought about that wrong. I thought about it completely wrong. And it's funny because I'm saying right now, here's how it should be. And then fairly recently, I did the opposite. So it's a case of me blowing it. We were not able to find anybody who fit. We did it backwards. We should have found people with the temperament that was a fit. Can they run a camera? Who gives a shit? We'll figure out how to get them to be able to run the camera capably between now and when the plane takes off. That is so much easier than finding somebody who is a temperament fit. So we applied the wrong filter first. That was the problem. We had a filter of qualifications. We should have had a filter of temperament. You can teach somebody how to use a camera. You can't teach them as easily to have a mindset that fits. We did it backwards, and because of that, we did not find anybody who fit. Well, I look much more closely and strongly at these non-technical attributes than I ever have. You can get a sense of how somebody is with money based on things like what they choose to wear and what kind of car they drive. This tells you about their approach. I wear a lot of dirty white t-shirts and I drive a very sensible Subaru. Well, it doesn't tell you everything about me, but it kind of tells you what I'm not. Tells you a few things there. Back when Teslas first kind of came out, there were a lot of very young YouTubers that went and bought Teslas. And I can have a sense of how much revenue they're getting, without knowing their numbers based on their channel activity and all that. Like, this was not a smart move to buy a Tesla for this person. Well, it tells me something about them. I'm talking about cars here, but there are 1,000 things, that you pick up on. Before we hit record on this, we were talking about books and literature. We were not talking about any modern bestsellers. Kevin and I were talking about old books, things that ranged from, the 40s and 50s to, 1700s. Well, that tells you something about the two of us. Not everything. Maybe we both do love the most modern fiction, maybe. But you take these pieces of information and assemble a sense of what a person is. And then you have to be honest about what it shows. If we have two people and one has never been married and the other one has been divorced 5 times, are you telling me that you don't make a judgment, at least about the relative lives of those two people? Of course you do. And it does tell you something. Not everything, but it tells you something. You put all these little pieces together and get a sense of to what degree they are in control of their lives. This matters so much more than a resume at this point. People's lives are wildly more complex than they were even a few decades ago. It's even more important now to get a sense of how people are actually going about their lives. And the ones who are in control, no matter how weird their individual circumstances are, what amounts to control for them, have a massive, massive leg up. The only constant that I can really put together from all the different types of people is that like everybody does need to nail the eating and sleeping. Like, this is just a biological thing that everybody needs to have happen. Once it gets past that, it starts to depend on the person. But you got to have control of all of it. We've talked to enough people too on this podcast. Some people are very much in control. Some seem like they're not, but actually are. Michael Reeves is a good example of this. Alan Pan is a good example of this. These people seem like they're total chaos. Well, they are, but they're in control of their chaos. Now, again, I'm not calling anybody out, but we've talked to people who have far less control of themselves. This is why this podcast has interviewed somebody who recently had to beat allegations of incest. In terms of guests, that's a guest with less control over their life. Which side do you want to be on? Which side do you think is best for productivity and creativity and long-term sustainability?
Probably not the incest side. I'm going to stay with I personally, I don't want to be too kind of judgmental or, go out on a limb here, but I personally would stay away from that and really recommend others do too. I think I'm comfortable saying that publicly.
We can add that to, now we have three constants: eat well, sleep well, avoid incest.
That's the new slogan. It's going to replace make something mean something. Eat well. Hey, welcome to The Great Unknown, the home of eat well, sleep well, avoid incest. How does that sound? It doesn't really, I don't know if that has the same kind of flow to it, but I think that's a fair enough slogan to live by. Maybe we'll make some t-shirts. But I like the overall point, and it's something that I know that, you have been poking at and we've been talking about for months now. So it was good to get onto the podcast for sure. And I think it's also a really worthy thing for people to self-evaluate. And, well, I guess, and also consider
constant self-evaluation.
When you talk about, their relationships with others and everything, it's like, you got to start there. When you were discussing the thing about, we were looking for like a great camera person, but it turns out, we should have been looking for someone who was just energetic and upbeat and, going to be a good fit. Everything works that way. Well, no. You can say that about sports. I mean, there are a million athletes over the years who were the most talented people in the world, but they were a complete human disaster. The most recent one I can think of is Terrell Owens, who was a wide receiver in the NFL, who is top 3 wide receivers all time, I think, without question, but was just a human wrecking ball and just bounced from team to team for a while at the end of his career because was just constantly exploding with his personality and everything. But this happens a lot in Hollywood too, with actors. And, why does this person get these roles all the time when they're not the best actor? It's like, well, because it's not just about that. It's about getting along with the crew. It's about showing up on time and not being hung over or wasted or whatever. There are so many of these life things that have to be in order to work with other people on a project like a movie set where, maybe they are, that the talent is the 5th most important thing about them, but the first 4 are life things that allow you to finally just shoot a movie because they show up on time and they're not a disaster and they get along with other people and the crew likes them and they memorize their lines and they show up prepared. And those things are what you're talking about are much, much more important than number 5 on the list, which is, they're a great actor.
We did this so successfully, and we were also very lucky with Ben, producer Ben. He had 0 skills of any useful kind when we started out. Now, that's a bit of a reduction, but all the things that he can do now, he could do none of them back then. None. He set up the Discord for us, and that was a good experience. He did what he said he would do, and he did it on time. So then it was, okay, what's the next thing that we need? Well, he did that, figured out how to do it, and did it on time, and made it easy. And then we said, okay, let's see if you want to add audio, we can put you in a position to learn from somebody who's very good at this, and you'll have those skills, and then you can do it. And He did. Well, it's been how many years now? We did finally. We must have hit. Isn't today the day? October 25th? Is that the official birthday of the Create Unknown?
We're recording on the 26th, but yeah, I think we're right around the the birthday. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been 5+ years of him acquiring skills and doing things. At no point did he have the skills that we needed. He didn't. He got them, and it's been a really easy process. He's done what he's had to do to acquire that stuff. It's so funny to me that I blew it so hard with trying to find good fits for this trip, because here we're talking about having done that successfully, and talking about at different times other people we've worked with that haven't worked out and why they haven't worked out despite their skill. We've done this so many times in the specific context of these types of projects, and I still blew it. I used the wrong heuristic on this. I have a very strong sense of how it should be, and I still blew it. It is hard to do. Hopefully I won't blow it again. I'll make it a point to ask myself on this and double check and hopefully have other people point it out when I don't do it right. But no, this is all just a marker of whether it's likely to work. Kevin mentioned the sports thing. It is sometimes talent is enough. Sometimes it's not. That makes me look for the things that are deal breakers early on.
Well, and the greatest of all time, no matter what it is, have the perfect combination of both the talent and, have the control. So, I mean, there's a reason that, for instance, Kobe Bryant is a legend and had this whole Mamba mentality thing that people talk about all the time to this day. And the Mamba mentality is basically just like to grind like a maniac all the time on your craft. But that Kobe Bryant also was drafted into the NBA out of freaking high school. So the guy had all of the talent on planet Earth, and then couple that with this Mamba mentality, like crazy in control of himself, where, I mean, I've told the story on this podcast about the story of that Olympic team in which all the guys were coming back from the club, like late night, all drunk at 4:00 in the morning. And Kobe Bryant is walking out of the hotel with his gym bag to go work out. And all of the other players are like, oh my God, what are you doing? You're just waking up to go work out and practice, and all these guys are stumbling back into the hotel wasted. It's like, well, these are two very different approaches. Which one do you think worked out in terms of being an all-time great basketball player who won 5 NBA championships? It's not hard to figure out.
Would he have been able to use that talent if he didn't exercise those elements of control?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, and we don't know for how long. But there have been a lot of fantastically talented athletes who ignored the conditions that would allow their talent to flourish. It's really such a clear example because we have quantitative, measurable things in sports that we really don't have anywhere else.
Yeah.
I love sports because of this. The statistics and the benchmarks too. Right? The simplest is, do you win or do you lose? It starts there, regardless of what your stats are. We can quantify somebody's productivity. But it all kind of works the same way. Roger Clemens, you talk about Kobe Bryant. Well, back in our day, I liked Roger Clemens a lot, precisely because he had that same sort of work ethic. Now, he seems to have used additives to improve on that work ethic. But even steroids don't work if you're not in the gym. It's not like you can just inject them and grow muscle. It doesn't work that way. The people who are the best do both. It's just like what you said. Ted Williams was a meticulous, freakish tracker of the pitchers he faced. It's the sort of thing that the analytics in sports now are what he was doing on his own with paper and pencil in the 40s. There's this incredible diagram of the parts of the strike zone that correspond to his hitting prowess in each one. And he developed a sense of even hittable pitches, some being much more hittable than others. And maybe he lets a strike go by or two strikes go by because they weren't good enough strikes for him to hit. That's really having control over his talent. To use his talent of swinging a baseball bat and hitting pitches, he's doing something unrelated to what's happening when he's standing at the plate that allows him at the plate to perform. A lot of people do this. Some of the best YouTubers do this. Oki is a really fantastic example of this because Oki has that same commitment to research that Ted Williams had to hitting. It's why his videos don't come out every 2 weeks. It's why there might be 2 a year. He does so much stuff unrelated to making the actual video that is in service in a roundabout way to making the video. It is absolutely critical. And it looks like chaos that, he's spending months reading about God knows what and flying somewhere to talk to weirdos. It looks like unstructured chaos. And it is unstructured, but it's all in service of what he essentially has control over. That using that chaos and channeling it into a coherent narrative that is extremely unique. It's everything.
Well, and he's an example of someone we spoke with who got in control of what he was eating. That was part of our last podcast with him.
Right, yeah.
So, I mean, that kind of plays right into exactly what you're talking about, was just getting in control of yourself and setting up the conditions. I mean, we started with this discussion just talking about my scenario with my studio and all of this stuff. And then, but even that, that's next level. It goes deeper before I get into getting control of my studio, getting control of yourself. So you've really kind of peeled back and stripped back the discussion to the person, which is where it starts. Like, quite obviously, it's without any question.
This is probably the last thing I have to say on the control element. You know how periodically some Twitch streamer will say something about how they have the most grueling, hardest life in the world?
Yeah.
That there's nothing in the world more difficult than streaming for 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is not hard. It's fatiguing to be on. Being watched and listened to where every one of your thoughts and actions ends up mattering, that is a fatiguing thing. So there's an element of truth to it. However, Friday, after a very long week of work, I, as a relatively out of shape, broken down 41-year-old man, could do 6 hours on camera and mic that included molten lead blowing up and bouncing off my face, at which time we did a couple more hours after that, and I wasn't tired, and I didn't complain about it being the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, because I exercise basic control over my life and mind and body. If you are 22 and you can't do that, there's stuff to work on. There is stuff to work, and it's not like it was an everyday routine for me. It's the first time I'd opened Twitch up in like 8 months and did it cold. It's not what I do all day. I read and write all day. It's not like I'm on, we do this podcast, but that's not an all day, everyday thing. It's not like I have a morning show from 9 to 1 every day of my life. So I have no practice with this. It is not that I have any talent for it. It's not that I have any heroic ability to pull it off. No, I'm not weighed down by the idiotic liabilities. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and there's always
you know why I streamed on Friday? Yeah, because
there's always stuff to work on, like you said. But the point is that it might not be your YouTube video format. It might be a little bit more basic than that.
It's you. You are the problem. Every time, you and your life is the problem. It's true. It really is. I really sincerely believe that. If you've got a problem, it is almost always a you problem. It may not be your fault, but it's in your lap nonetheless. Yeah, your ideas are good. Your creativity is good. You're funny, entertaining, musical, whatever your thing is. It's probably pretty strong. Even if it's not, it'll get there. But do you have control over who you are? Well, if you don't, it's over. It's over before it begins.
Yeah. So the lesson of the podcast is that when Matt says the problem is you, he means me. I am the problem. I certainly have been the problem for the last month as to why this podcast hasn't happened. So, please accept my full apologies for that. We will be back next week, though, and the week after that, and the week after that. I promise that will happen, and maybe at a more regular time as well. We'll see. If you want to support the podcast, please go to thecreateunknown.com, or patreon.com/thecreateunknown. See, that's how out of practice I am with all of this stuff. I don't even know what our Patreon is, maybe I'm not eating, sleeping, or avoiding incest well enough in order to do my call at the end of the episode, my call to action.
This is what hot dogs and incest do to a man.
Hot dogs and incest. That's what the title of this podcast will be. Thank you, Matt, for that. We are absolutely leaving off on that note. Until next time, We will see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week, and the recent support has been amazing. Sid Poke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezer Good, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. Thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Farrakhan, Jen Mefasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahim, Natsu, Penny Peddler, Risebread, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Vidioger. And a tremendous shout out to our elite baby gang commanders: Atrocious Guff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight, Vinthos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, Jelksies, and of course, Trevstead. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer-editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yoshua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it. And a special thanks to Main Gear for powering all of our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.